Hi everyone. Now in this session we're going to get through the paper 1 multiple choice questions 1 through 15. So this is from 2009 for pre-EU economics. Okay, so first question. An economy produces two goods, cars and butter. The diagram shows the economy's production possibility frontier. Why is the frontier curved outwards? Okay, well, there's a clear reason for this, as I've really highlighted with point A here, moving through to point B, and that is that some resources are better allocated to the production of butter rather than cars. You can see that for a small reduction in cars, you can increase the amount of butter quite substantially. Okay, it would have exactly the same sort of effect if we went from a point down here as well up to say here. So yeah, it's therefore going to be A, some resources better suited to the production of cars and others to butter. Okay, let's move it on. Question 2. So with question 2 here, a consumer allocates his expenditure over time. What would cause an increase? Okay, so there's an increase in the opportunity cost of current consumption. So we've got to think about firstly what the opportunity cost is of consuming or consumption, and the opportunity cost of consumption, of course, would be saving really, or investing that money. Okay, so we'll be looking for something along those lines in the answer, but we've got to bear in mind that it's going to increase the opportunity cost and in effect act as a bit of a deterrent for current consumption. So therefore a decrease in his current income, no. That's not the opposite of what we want here. Okay, a decrease in interest rates, well, that's not going to increase the opportunity cost. An increase in his current income, again, no. An increase in interest rates, well, yes, this one is, so our answer would be D, because that would increase the opportunity cost of current consumption. Okay, right, let's move it on. So number 3, just excuse my scribbling there. Okay, so if we just think about this question, we've got the table shows the relationship between the demand for good Y and the price of good X. Okay, all right, so within this we can see that we've got a price change for good X and a quantity change for good Y. Okay, so these goods quite clearly are related to one another. Okay, but it substitutes complements. Let's have a little look. So if we just put in the actual percentage change in demand in the quantity demanded, okay, of good Y, okay, we can see that the percentage change is what, 65, from 100 to 65, so we can just work that out quickly. So we can put 65 in for good Y, and how much is the price change in good X? Well, let's just have a little look at this. So if I just put that in on the calculator, we've got change divided by the original times 100 equals okay, right, so it equals 2.22. Okay, sorry, 22.2% recurring. Okay, so therefore from this we can then just put in 65 divided by 22.2 recurring, 2.92. So we get 2.92. Now notice that this is a price increase, of course, and this is a quantity increase as well, so they've got a positive relationship. Okay, so there's a positive relationship for these goods. They're clearly substitutes, and we can see that the answer will be there, because based on what we've just calculated, it's 2.9. Of course, you could have taken other points, and that should still lead you through to this answer, D. Okay, right, so let's have a little look at question 4. So with question 4, it's a bit of indifference curve analysis. Okay, let's just zoom out a little bit there, just so we can get everything in. Although actually, let's just focus in on this, because we can see the question there. Which statement about the effect on the consumer's demand for good X is correct? Okay, so yeah, it's really asking us to understand the income and substitution effects. Okay, so we've got a price change which has caused this budget constraint to go from K out to M, so JK out to JM. So in essence, the consumer can afford more of this good. So if we then just work across from here, we can see that there's a big effective change in the income. The consumer can afford to buy more of this goods. There is a positive income effect here. And if we just remove that income effect by going to the new budget constraint, and then we reach a line which is just tangential there, so it's just tangential to this point on the original indifference curve. From here through to here, we can see the substitution effect, and from here to here we can see the income effect. So this is our substitution effect, and this is our income effect. Okay, so which statement about the effect on the consumer's demand for good X is correct? The income effect is 0. No, that's not the case. The substitution effect is 0. No. The income effect exactly offsets the substitution effect. No. The income effect reinforces the substitution effect. Yes, the answer is D. Okay, right. So question 5. Right. So what would cause a movement along an industry supply curve? Okay, so in thinking about this, we've got a movement along. It doesn't say a shift, it says a movement along. So just think about the nature of the supply curve, where it looks something along these lines. Okay, so we're simply dealing with a movement from, say, point A to point B, or alternatively from point B back to point A. Okay, so is it a change in the price of raw materials? Well, no, that would actually cause a new supply curve, so it would cause a leftward shift in supply if it was a price rise. So no, it's not that, because that's not a movement. A change in the price of a substitute good. Well, this is going to cause a shift in demand, of course. Okay, so will that actually work here? So let's say that there's a increase in the actual price of a substitute good, so perhaps the price of beef rises. What impact does this have on lamb? Okay, so the demand for lamb would then increase, so we then go from D to D1, and we can see that we do actually have movement along here, the supply curve taking place in that instance. An improvement in technology, well, that would be a rightward shift to the supply curve. Imposition of sales tax, that would be a leftward shift on the supply curve. So the answer is going to be B. Okay, right. So the table shows information about a profit maximizing firm. Okay, so we can see outputs, we can see fixed cost, but most crucially for this question, we can see the actual price per unit and the variable costs per unit. Okay, so the price is below the variable cost here. Okay, that is significant, of course. So if you can remember the shutdown rule off the top of your head, well done. But let's just have a little look as to how this can look on a diagram. Okay, if we just draw in our marginal cost, label our axes there and our quantity. Okay, let's draw in our price line. So we've got our demand equals average revenue curve. In essence, we've got a variable cost level which is above the actual output. So let's just imagine that variable cost actually goes something like that. Meanwhile, total cost, average total cost would look something like that. And then we see variable cost, average variable cost here. So there's a problem for this business. Let's assume that producing at this point here, but we can see that they are making a loss on each unit that they are producing, because the average variable cost is £1.75 and their price is £1.70. So in essence, this business needs shut down immediately, okay? Because it is not covering its fixed costs. No, well, that's not the problem. The big problem is that it is not covering its variable cost. Okay, so the answer will be C. Okay, right. Number 7. So an industry consists of firms X and Y. The profit payoff matrix shows how the profits of X and Y vary depending on the price charged. Both firms make profits of £6 million. Okay, what could explain this outcome? Right, so let's just have a look at what the dominant strategy of each firm is likely to be. So will Y want to charge £10? Well, they could make 6 million, or they could make a loss. If they charge just £5, they could make 10 million, or they could make nothing. So the dominant strategy for Y would be to charge £5. For X, would it be to charge £5? Yeah, it looks very similar, of course. Or 6 million and minus 3 million. So their dominant strategy would be to charge £5 as well. So given that we have an outcome here, what's taking place? Well, it's got to be collusion. Okay, so that's formal collusion taking place in that instance. Okay. Right, so number 8. Now, which is not an example of an externality. Okay, so just remember firstly what an externality is. It's an external effect on a third party, of course, okay, and it can be good or bad. So an increase in the production of good X causes an increase in the quantities of factor inputs to produce good Y. Okay, so when it comes to this one, is this an externality? Okay, yes, well, it would clearly be an externality. So it increases the quantities of factor inputs needed to produce good Y. So yes, that's clearly an externality. Jones' enjoyment of good X is directly affected by the amount of good Y consumed by Smith. Okay, so again, there's an innocent party being affected, so that's an externality. Jones's enjoyment of good X is directly affected by the production of good Y. Again, that's an externality. The level of profits earned by firm X depends in part on the prices charged by firm Y. Well, that's simply what you see in a competitive market, isn't it? So this isn't really what we would actually judge to be an externality in a formal setting, okay? Because it isn't a direct external consequence on an innocent third party. It's a competitive market, so yeah, the answer would be D. Okay, right, number 9. So which sequence correctly describes direction of the causal relationship between different properties of public goods? Okay, so we know pure public goods, non-rival and non-excludable, so let's just look at those. So I'm immediately led here to A and to B, okay? So what is so important about public goods? Of course, are these characteristics. So what about these orders? Do these make sense in terms of the causal relationship? Well, the non-excludable aspect is what actually accounts for the free rider problem. And the fact that people then do not reveal their preference is also really important. So just glancing across these, I can see that this one certainly fits the bill here. So it's non-excludable. That means that anyone can consume it. That means that you may have free riders, and because they do not have to pay for it, you don't know what's going on. So that seems entirely accurate. Whereas non-rival then to non-revealed preference, no, it doesn't make the same degree of sense, because this bit simply means that anyone can consume it, of course. So the answer would be B. Okay. So number 10. Okay, a rural area is served by two small towns, X and Y. Both have a free car park. There are always plenty of spaces in the car park in Y, but the car park in X is often full. X decides to charge a parking fee. Okay, so we've got two car parks. Let's just make a note of this. So X then decides to charge a parking fee, which I'm just putting down as that circle. X decides to charge a parking fee. As a result, some motorists who previously shopped in X, now they switch to Y. Others, however, switch from Y to X. Okay, so remember, X is often full. So we've got others that were really keen, clearly, to park in X, but couldn't do so previously. So what is the impact on the economic welfare of the two groups? Okay, so these consumers who are going from X to Y, so those who switch from X to Y, they're clearly losing out because they would have preferred, all other things being equal, to have parked in car park X, but now they're moving to Y. So immediately I'm led to C or D. And what about those moving from Y to X? Well, these people perhaps couldn't find parking spaces previously. And given that they are now prepared to actually pay for those parking spaces, it could be about convenience, but it could also, and it certainly does represent that they are getting a degree of consumer surplus from that. So therefore, the answer would be C, lose and gain. Okay. Right, number 11. Okay, so with number 11, which of the following is financial economy of scale? Nice, easy one. Okay, lower risk due to diversification. Well, that's an economy of scale, but it's not financial. Okay, that's the crucial aspect here. Lower costs in raising capital. Yes, well, that's certainly true. So public limited companies can raise finance a lot cheaper than smaller companies. Lower costs of marketing. Yeah, well, that's marketing economy scale. Lower variable costs of production. No, well, that's just things like bulk buying. Okay, so no. The answer would be B. Right, so number 12. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so with 12, the maximum price that a privatised natural monopoly is allowed to charge its customers is determined by the following formula: the price charged in the previous year plus the annual percentage change in the CPI minus 2%. Okay, assuming the firm charges the maximum price allowed, how will an increase in productive efficiency affect consumers and the company's shareholders? Okay, so let's just consider how this would actually be represented. So this firm is now more productively efficient. It is a natural monopoly. So let's just draw in the demand curve. D equals AR there. Okay, and what we have seen, natural monopolies, of course, they do not actually attain all of the available economies of scale, even though they are monopolies. So we're likely to have a circumstance like this: long run average total cost here, and here, long run average total cost. Put in too many T's there, but you get the idea. We can see those average total costs reduce, and therefore they are more productively efficient. So that would increase the actual margin that the firm is making. Okay, so for shareholders, there's likely to be a gain. Okay, so they're likely to gain from this. However, customers, well, we're not dealing with the change in the actual demand curve. There's likely to be no effect. So therefore, we're looking at C as the answer here. Okay, so 12 would be C. Okay. Next one, number 13. An investment appraisal carried out on behalf of a private construction firm estimated that building a new road, assuming a £5 toll, would result in a financial loss of 50 million. Given this £5 toll, a cost-benefit study confirmed that this estimate of the expected loss of the company was correct, but the cost-benefit study made the following additional estimates. Okay, so the value of external benefits is 20 million, and that's positive. The value of external costs in terms of this cost-benefit study would be negative, and the consumer surplus is positive. Okay, so we can see out of this we get 100 million plus and 30 million, which is negative. So what was the cost benefit study's estimate? The net social benefits, then we would see the answer for 13 to be D. Okay, right, 14. Okay, so with 14, what is likely to be the effect of an increase in the minimum wage on the participation rate and the unemployment rate? So let's just consider this for a competitive market, a competitive labour market quickly. And if we've got W and employment here, and let's just draw in demand for labour and supply of labour curves. Okay, so I'm just doing this very, very quickly here. Okay, so we've got W1, we've got E1, and then we've got a national minimum wage. Okay, so of course we're assuming that the national minimum wage, if it gets introduced, will be introduced above the equilibrium. Okay, because otherwise it won't have any effect. And so therefore we can see that we have two other outcomes here. We have E2, E3. Right, now look at where supply and demand actually meet in effect. Okay, supply and demand meet at this point here. So we'd actually see a reduction in employment here down to E2. And of course that's our national minimum wage. Meanwhile, we actually have a surplus of workers here. So there's a surplus. So there's an increase in the participation rate, which has gone from here for E1 to E3. But now unemployment is that big difference here between E2 and E3. So unemployment has increased. Okay, so the effect on the participation rate increase, right? So it's one of those two. Effect on the unemployment rate increase. So the answer would be A. Okay, right.